Today we channel our inner psycho killer with this amazing leather mask project. Stay tuned. Greetings adventurers and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So it is the fall season here in New England, which means the sweater game is in full swing. We got some hot toddies and the spooky season is upon us. Y'all, I love Halloween. This whole time of the year is just mwah for me. So for today, I was thinking we could do something kind of fun and just like tinker around with some leather and try to make like a badass killer mask out of it. I'm gonna be honest with you. This one came to me kind of spare at the moment. I didn't think it through well, but honestly, I think you're gonna like how it comes out. Before we start, if you're not subscribed already, why don't you do me a favor and check that out to learn how to do more cool crap like this. Now, as I said, I didn't think this through very well when I got started. So the first thing we need to do with any project like this when we're gonna be working with leather is to make a template, right? We don't wanna just start cutting leather willy-nilly. It's kind of an expensive product. But since I'm making a mask and it needs to fit all the intricate curves of my face, I think I underestimated how tricky that might be. It actually isn't that tricky, you'll see. But the first thing I did was started kind of measuring all of the major different points of my face, like the distance from my ear to the tip of my nose and from the top of my head to my chin. Then I plotted that out on some paper here so that I can cut out this roughly mask-shaped thing. My thought was then to kind of like tuck it around, and wherever there was folds and creases, I would cut, and then it would like come together. I don't know, in my head it made sense. In practicality though, that's kind of a pain in the ass. So then I moved on to tinfoil, thinking I could just kind of wrap it around my face. And then once all the major features were in there, I could lay it back out and use that as my bases. Again though, it was proving to be not effective. But in every other time I've made a template, I've just done it with like masking tape, right? So I figured maybe I was just kind of overthinking it. So I busted out this old like bald cap I had here from a Halloween store. I think the thing was like $9. I used that to protect my hair, and I just started kind of taping my face. Which, by the way, if anybody were to just like poke into my window here out of context at random times and just see me like shoving tinfoil on my face and then taping my head up, I do stupid crap when I'm alone. Anyways, you only really need to tape one half of your face. It's gonna be a mask. I want it to be symmetrical anyways, and I'm hoping my face is mostly symmetrical for this. Oh, and if you don't have a bald cap, by the way, you can just use like saran wrap. I just had it and it was really easy. Cool, so with that half of my face all adequately covered up, I just went back in with a Sharpie and kind of highlighted the areas that I would want the lines of the mask to be. Basically just highlighting the bone structure of my face, like where my temples are, where my cheekbone lies. Kind of this bulge right here where the muscle is. Bulge. Nice. I kind of want this to look like a patched together thing, like with pieces of scrap or whatever. Though I do really think it's funny when you think of any like horror movie killer going through the woods with this mask and whatever. Like did that killer just have an arts and craft project like this first? Like did he have to take the dimensions of his face and like slowly sew things together? I really want to see that montage where they just start crafting things together. I think that would be hysterical. Anywho, since it's just masking tape, it easily pulled off of my face. From there, I was able to clean up the edges to put it into the right shape before going back in with a pencil and really defining where I want all of those kind of different pieces to be. Again, I want it to kind of mirror what the bone structure of a face would be in the first place. And I want it to have a good amount of seams because I want it to look kind of just roughly sewn together. Once I have those lines in, I go with some scissors and cut out each one of those individual pieces. And when you lay it back out, you see what the issue was with me just wrapping things around my head before. You see all that blank space between the pieces? Since my head is, three-dimensional, when you lay all that down flat, there's no way for that to be cleanly flat, right? You need those empty spaces so that when they go back together, they form that shape. Now, super important at this point, go back in and mark all your pieces. Use whatever symbols you want to use, just make sure you can put it back together. There's a couple times I took this apart and had no idea what I was doing. All right, from here, I took all those different pieces and actually stuck it onto a piece of paper. This is gonna do two things. One, it's gonna stop the sticky side from constantly like wanting to stick to itself and be a pain in the ass. But also, I need to add like seam allowances to certain pieces, especially the pieces that go underneath other pieces. In order to do that, I just busted out this compass here and set it to 1/4 of an inch. And then I use that just to make extra perimeters around those pieces where it's required. Then I just went back in with an X-Acto knife and cut all those out. To further kind of demonstrate that so you can wrap your head around it, you can see on this piece here, This dotted line means that that edge there is going to be overlapped by something else. It's going to go underneath something. That's just how I mark it. You can mark it whatever way you want. So by adding that extra 1/4 inch allowance, now you can see that it slides down that 1/4 inch, giving me a way to sew them together. Some pieces only need that little bit. Other pieces like this one need it all the way around. Okay, now if you're really brave, you can go ahead and just commit this to leather and start going. I am not that brave, and again, leather is expensive. I like to try it out one more time before I commit it to leather. To do that, it's really nice just to have some of this thin EVA foam on hand. It's really cheap, and if you mess up, it's pretty forgiving. So I just use my templates to cut it out of this EVA foam, and then use some masking tape to stick everything back together in the way it would go. And I am super glad I did this. Because you don't really know until you've put it all kind of back together in this way if things are gonna work out right. So for example, that middle piece here that goes over my head, and then this piece that comes down around my eye, where they would meet together, that how thin that gets, that isn't gonna work. It would actually be easier if I have it all one piece and leave that little middle piece at my ridge line here a little bit thicker. Also, that eyebrow there, I want it to actually come past the cheekbone, because I want to add some shape to it and stuff later on too, and I really want it to be like a feature of that mask. And in fact, once I put the whole thing to my face, I realized that eyebrow ridge is just, it's too high. I want it to cover more. It looks like I got my wide eyes open. It's crazy. So with that all in mind, I go back to those original templates I made, and I just put little markings along those lines where I need to increase and the measurement by how much I need to increase it by. I also tape those other two pieces together so I know they go together. And with that, I draw it onto this foam board and cut it out one more time. Now that was supposed to be like one of those really epic like edits where you just do that and all of a sudden it's there and they're laying out right and it looks cool. It didn't go, that piece is stuck. Just imagine, from right here, imagine that's what happened and be like, wow, that was awesome. Just do me a solid, it'd be great. Also hit the thumbs up, it's awesome too. Now while I'm making this, I'm trying to get my headspace into the crazed murderers doing this arts and craft project. I realized that while he like waits for glue to dry, or even when he's on the hunt and waiting for someone to finish their shower or to enter a room saying, Brad, is that you? They must need something to like unwind and keep their hands busy or whatever. Well, for all you mask-wearing, machete-toting lunatics out there, today's sponsor, Fume, has just the thing for you. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device, which is a much better alternative to all those bad habits you might try to kick. Except for the murder, we're keeping the murder here. As a flavored air device, there's nothing like nicotine. No vapor, it's completely non-toxic, doesn't require any batteries, and doubles as a little fidget device. Listen, satisfying little clicks and whatnot. I love that. Now the way it works is you have these little flavor cores that you can put inside that allows you to draw just air through it into your mouth, and it's flavored. It's actually really, really good. And since this is the fall, I'm really into the cinnamon hearts flavor. It's just, yeah, it sets the vibe. And for all you crafty killers out there, Fume has a special offer. Just head over to tryfume.com/skilltree, or use the QR code on the screen and use my code SKILLTREE, and you'll get a free topper when you order your journey pack. This is just an awesome accessory that adds like a chewable rubber tip to the end here, which, let's be honest, makes it even more like fidget worthy. Love this thing. So whether you're hunting somebody through the woods to avenge sins of the past, or just working on your next project, you'll love using this little thing here. Again, that's tryfume, tryfum.com/skilltree, and use my code SKILLTREE for that free topper. All right, where was I? Oh yeah, okay, now that we have all of those down to like foam board, it's time to actually put them onto the leather. To do this, I just kind of laid them in place and used an awl to scratch the shape into it. Then used a sharp X-Acto knife to cut my shape out. Now, as you go, once you've cut it out one way, turn them over, because remember, we've only got one side of the face done, right? We want to have the other side as well. In order to do that, it needs to be a mirror, so you want to like turn them upside down and then cut that out. So you should have two pieces like this that are reflections of each other. Just go along and do that with all the pieces until you're good to go. Except for the middle one here. That one's shared by both of them. You get it. It's not hard. Now with that done, we're gonna do all the standard stuff like treating the edges. Going in with an edge beveler, removing that kind of sharp edge. And then we're gonna slick it, which for me, I just end up using a drill with a little slicker brush in it. And then I secured the button with another clamp. It's all very technical. Then I just took that piece of leather and moved its edge all along this wet sponge here to get it moist, so that I could run it along the slicker brush and get a nice even edge. There are machines for this or whatever. I don't know, this was just the easiest thing I had around. It worked out really well too. Now this would be the point in which if you wanted to put like a lot of different tooled designs in there, that you can do that. I don't, except for the fact that I want the edges, because a lot of them are going to be butting together or whatever, I do want there to be some kind of delineation just before that edge, just to give it a little extra interest, and it'll also kind of cheat and show me where my stitches will go. So to do that, I just wet down the leather so it would accept a mark easier, and then set this wing divider here to about 1/8 of an inch. This way I could run it all along the edges of my pieces, giving me a really easy guide to follow. In following it, I'm just going to be using this bevel stamp here, and I'm not even hammering it. I'm just going to kind of push down and drag it along that line. It gives me a really kind of subtle line and helps define the edges of each one of those pieces. Again, I think it'll look a little bit raw if it just kind of goes smooth. That's just a me thing though. Do whatever you want to do. Okay, so we've learned in this video here, where I figured a bunch of different ways to dye leather, that actually wetting the leather ahead of time helps make everything really even. So I go in with our sponge and just wet everything down before hitting it with my dye. I'm making all the parts that are going underneath other parts a dark brown, where the parts that are up on the top a light brown. I think this just adds a really cool contrast and makes the whole thing look a lot more interesting rather than it being just kind of one monotone color. All right, we're at the part where we're gonna actually start putting this thing together, but then I realized, like, I have to know exactly how much those pieces overlap each other, right? I can't just start going together all willy-nilly because it might end up being a little too small for my dome. But it turned out we already had the solution for that anyways. We just took our original templates that have that paper hanging over the edge, and I just put that on top of the leather, and I used the stylus to trace our original taped template. This leaves me with a really light line that shows me exactly how much the pieces need to overlap. So since we're making this template from scratch, we don't have any guidance on kind of where to put our holes or like how everything will go together. So in order to make this as easy as possible, I wanted to stick it together first before we could sew it together. To do that, I just busted out some of this Tanner's Bond tape here, which is like a really strong two-sided tape. This I laid down in all those areas that we just kind of marked off with our stylus here. And don't worry if some hangs over the edges, you can just go back in and cut it nice and clean. With that tape in place, I just removed the paper backing and then started sticking all of the pieces together. And this is where having that kind of foam template already put together really comes in handy, because I could use it as a reference to make sure I'm laying it all out with the correct distances and everything. And from here, it's kind of looking like side profile Iron Man, right? It's kind of cool. Now from here, we got to put in our stitches, right? But I'm not going to be too precious about how I do this, because again, I want this to be just some like crazy person in the woods sewing it together. They're not going to really like space everything apart perfectly. So I'm going to be a little haphazard with where I put these. But to make sure there's at least a corresponding hole on either side of each piece there, I'm going to use this wing divider that's set basically how much it would take to go from that line that I made onto the next piece. Then I just kind of walk it along at semi-random distances, kind of off-center from each other a little bit, and just a little crazy. Then I just go in with this little single hole stitcher punch here to turn those marks into useful stitch holes. And look at that, that automatically looks kind of professional. Clearly not even, but it still looks cool. Cool, so from here, I'm just gonna stick it into my stitching pony and start actually stitching this thing together. Now, stitching, notoriously hard to catch on camera. So in order to see the exact stitch I'm using, you can actually check out this video here. We're doing, I think it's called the cross stitch, and it starts around the 16-minute mark. That'll show you kind of step by step what I'm doing here. But it's not that hard in general. I just have a thread with 2 needles on it. Each needle comes out of one of the holes next to each other. Then they cross over and go back into that same hole. And then in the back, they just kind of cross and go into the next holes, and they just continue on. Though if you notice, I'm varying up which way the cross goes. And also sometimes I'm just completely going off and doing like whatever, like random stitches. Because again, I just kind of want this to look a bit more cobbled together. It's the vibe I'm going for. Now it can all remain pretty flat while I'm sewing it until I kind of got to the temple here. This turned out to be the linchpin that actually like makes it shaped the way I want it to be shaped. To do this, I really had to put it over my knee just so I can make everything line up and actually fit the right way. Cool, so with all that stitching done, I have both sides of my mask here. And these are already looking kind of cool. I'm starting to get really excited. Though I'm also in a lot of pain. Man, I hate hand stitching. If you find an old Leathercrafter who like doesn't have arthritis yet, I imagine they can just like crush your skull with one hand. I finished sewing 3 days ago and they still hurt. It hurts so much. Anyways, now we need to start combining those two pieces together. To do this, we do all the same things. I just kind of lined up that little mouth area where it would go, used my wing divider to make my marks, punched those holes, and then sewed everything up. And now it looks like two iron men kissing. It's beautiful. It's so sweet. I just continued this stitch all the way up the nose until I reached to kind of just between the eyebrows here where it really starts to want to round off more. From here, we just need to add that one last kind of middle piece there. Now this one, because it is such an extreme angle around, I really wasn't able to lay it in an orientation where I can make all of the marks. So I just kind of lined up what I could line up, used those wing dividers to make marks, and then used an awl to punch my holes. Once I have that piece sewn together, I line up the next piece that I could line up, and then do the same thing. I'm not gonna lie, this was the most challenging part. Continually kind of holding everything in the right orientation while I stitched, it was genuinely hard. But super worth it, look at how cool that is. I'm really glad I decided to have the stitches kind of go in all these weird directions, and also the general like shape of where bone structure and muscle would be. I don't know, I really like how it's coming out. Though I'm not gonna lie, at this point he kind of looks like a sentient football. This is who the villain is gonna be. He's gonna be like, he will be the spirit of like a football player who found out that there was a plan to throw the game to earn money, but he was murdered for what he knew and now he's seeking vengeance. So stupid. We'll have a whole series. The first one will be called First Down. I gotta write this down. This is gold. This is pure gold. That being said, Wilson here, but Wilson is our killer now, by the way, obviously. Wilson here got kind of a moon-shaped problem. He's not so threatening. He looks more like an emoji wants to come and kill you or something. So, in order to give it some more shape, I'm just gonna go ahead and dunk it into this big old pot of water here. After giving it about a minute or so to soak it up, I take it back out and pat it dry enough so that I can slap it onto my face and start wet forming it so that it fits me nice and tightly. I also use this opportunity to give it more dimension by really kind of rolling up those eyebrow ridges and accentuating places like the cheeks just above the eyes and where the temples push in and all that. And once it dried into this position, look at how cool that is. I'm sorry, Wilson's looking badass. Now he's cutting a form that like could be terrifying. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of cool. Unless you're like a field goal kicker, then you're terrifying to him, but you know. Not only that, but it fits really well. I'm very, very happy with the way this turned out. Now, I just wanted to add a little bit more dimension to this whole thing, and there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm gonna opt for using an airbrush here, but if you don't have one, it's fine. I got a whole video here on how to like age leather and whatnot, where you can use things like sponges. There's a whole bunch of other ways to do it. So definitely check that out if you don't have an airbrush. If you do have an airbrush or you want to spray it some other way, you are going to need some dye reducer. To use this, I just added my black dye to a little cup here, and then I added like twice the amount of the reducer. I've tried other mixes like 50-50 mixes or whatever. It always clogs my gun. So I find that 2-to-1 ratio seems to do the trick for me. Then once it's added to the gun, I just really lightly went in, adding shadow to all the sunken in parts, and anywhere I really wanted to add that extra dimension to. Then I went back and sealed the whole thing with a leather balm. And yo, look at this thing. So cool. Wilson, you're so cool. At this point though, it just kind of would sit on your face, right? Like there's no way to hold it there. So I decided to go with kind of like a hockey mask kind of system. To do that, I just used these 3 straps here, which I dyed to be the dark brown. Once dried, I'm just gonna take one of those straps and I'm gonna make a little bite in the end of it, making sure that I could reach the top of my head down to about the center of the back of my head. Then I attached that strap to the top and the other 2 straps to the sides just behind the temple. As you can see, that bite has been secured down with some stitches, leaving me that loop that I can guide the other straps through. Then I just added this Sam Brown button here to hold it into place. You can definitely use like a buckle or add more holes to it so it's more adjustable. I know the shape of my head, so I just left it the shape of my head. But look at how good that fits. It is friggin' perfect. And in fact, just in general, look at this thing. This went from just like tape on my face to this beautiful creation. Like, I don't want to pat myself on the back too hard, but I'm genuinely very proud of this thing. It's like complex and it's shaped perfectly and the shadows look great. Oh my God, it came out so cool. And look at it. Oh, it fits perfectly. I really like this thing. I am so ready to chase you all the way to the 50-yard line. Just slashing. but only to the 50-yard line. Your boy doesn't do cardio. So, like, if you get past there, it's like crossing the bridge with the Headless Horseman. I'm winded. You survive. Now, I liked this project so much that I'm turning all those little templates I made into an actual digitized template, so you all can have it too. I'm gonna start by giving away to the Patreon members, but then I'll put it up in our store available for purchase. Hardest part is to figure out, like, I don't want to leave you without the holes, but like having the holes be randomized is kind of fun. Maybe I'll just make it a layer you can turn off. Now, I hope you liked this project. This was genuinely a lot of fun to make. If you did, again, why don't you give me some of that like and love, and don't forget to subscribe. You know, all the YouTube stuff. It really helps out. Also, leave down in the comments section, like, what you thought of this, or more of Wilson's backstory. Yeah, leave more of Wilson's backstory. In fact, whoever comes up with the most compelling backstory for Wilson here, I'll send you the template for free. I think that'll be fun. In the meantime, though, I hope you're having a safe and happy Halloween season. And no matter what, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support our channel. Another fantastic way to support our channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we can't do any of this without them. Special thanks to our newest high-tier Patreon member, Dakota Lowhorn. And a special shout out to our Grandmaster tier Patreon members, WildFox99, Froggy, Dragon Designs, and Yuri Sastro. If you like what we do here enough to want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you check out one of these videos here that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that'll help out a lot too. Now, if you don't mind, I gotta get on my cleats. Some killing needs doing. Poor Wilson. I knew him, Belichick.